We saw a new proposal introduced to help fix our broken roads following the massive defeat for Proposal 1. This new idea was introduced by House Republicans, and it would not involve any major tax hikes.
Instead, it would rededicate some funds and allocate more money from the general fund. Some of the details include generating $117 million by eliminating the earned income tax credit, which benefits low and moderate income families. It would also move $185 million in restricted funds coming from the film subsidies, the tribal gaming compact, and a tobacco settlement.
And then finally, over the next 4 years, more money would be siphoned off from the general fund, eventually using $700 million for roads. But now that it's been sitting around for a couple of days gelling, people are starting to chime in saying this is not the plan for Michigan.
Editorials from the Detroit News and MLive blast the plan, calling it a fantasy and saying it should be, quote, dead on arrival.
And in a Detroit Free Press column today, Brian Dickerson wrote, we'll quote him here, as it stands, the Speaker's roads plan could hardly be less daring or more cynical. In essence, it seeks to compensate for decades of disinvestment in Michigan's infrastructure by disinvesting even more dramatically in our state's human capital, paving the roads by draining what Governor Snyder likes to call the river of opportunity.
Joining us now to discuss this is Channel 7 pollster Tim Kiska and State Representative Leslie Love from Detroit. Thanks to both of you for being with us today. Tim, let's start with you here. Is this just a sign, do you think, of the gridlock to come this summer?
Yes, I do, at least in the short term. I mean, there is no option here. I mean, something has got to get done. Or, I mean, as Stephen remarked on election night, I mean, people were really upset, looking for another word for disaster, right? I mean, they're really going to be upset if nothing gets done. So I think there's going to be a considerable amount of squabbling for a bit. But, I mean, I think that I think their backs are up against the wall unless I've got something wrong here. And this just ain't flying.
Now, we were kind of interested in who is against this plan that we talked about, the Republicans have introduced right here so far. The conservative Detroit News actually speaking out against, I think they called this plan mostly fantasy. When you lose your friends, you got problems.
Yes, you do. And by the way, I mean, this is, I don't know anybody speaking up for it at the moment. So, yeah, it's pretty, I mean, when you've got Brian Dickerson and the Detroit News agreeing on something, I mean, at that point, you might as well just kiss the whole thing goodbye.
Representative Love, let's bring you in here. How do you think you can work with your colleagues across the aisle to come up with a plan that enough people are on board with to make it a reality to fix these roads?
Right. I think we absolutely have to continue the conversation and make sure that we keep core values in place. We want to make sure that we don't cut our funding to our schools and to our local governments and health and safety. And so if we start with some of our core values that we know that voters also care about, and also keep in mind that we have to find a sustainable source to fund our roads problem and not come up with Fugazi solutions
Now,
this.
Representative Love, as we look at the Republican plan kind of on the frame right here, is there anything in there that you think you can work with? Is there any place we can start with what's on the board now?
You know, I think we need to just start with our values of understanding, not misinterpreting what voters have said at the polls. Eliminating the earned income tax credit, for example, is not a good place to start. We have to start with really, and coming up with imaginary numbers and hopeful budgeting is not a place to start, but to really look at what are some real options here.
We interviewed Representative Farrington earlier this week, Republican, about this plan when it was introduced a couple days ago. Let's take a quick listen to what he had to say about the elimination of the earned income tax credit.
The EITC that you mentioned, the federal government gives 20%. At the state level, it's at 6%, and it's only been around for a couple years.
Tim, we'll start with you then on that comment right there. Are they being tone deaf to what voters want? Are they misinterpreting, or are they just hoping that that's what they want?
No, I think people want the roads fixed. And, you know, I think nobody's going to be happy with the final plan. I think there's probably got to be a tax increase in here someplace. But the whole idea of negotiating is everybody gets a little something. Maybe nobody comes home totally happy, and hopefully we'll be good to go. But good luck with that.
Yeah. Representative Love, is it likely in your mind that a tax increase will be involved in this?
It's likely.
And what kind? Gas tax, do you think? Other kind of tax? What do you see at this point?
This is one of my concerns with Proposal 1 not passing, that there will be increases with our registration fees. That'll still exist. But I think we still must maintain and keep intact what we value. The earned income tax credit, we were at 6%. Proposal 1 was going to increase that to 20%. That would have helped working families. And so that's important that we stick to those core values that help working people. And we don't finance roads on the back of working class families. And everyone kind of pitches into this.
Yeah, Representative Love, you might find an odd ally in this one from Governor Snyder, because I know he's not all that in favor either of getting rid of that earned income tax credit right now, at least. How's this going to shape up? Is it going to be the Democrats and the governor against the Republicans? Is it going to be the Republicans against everybody else? I mean, what's it going to look like, and how do we find that common ground to get the roads fixed?
I think we just continue to come back to the table, have that conversation, and I'm there, and I'm going to fight every day and continue the conversation every day until we come up with a solution that's acceptable and maintains our core values.
You know, real quick as we say goodbye, I will never forget when right after this went down, we had a representative, a Republican and a Democrat, and they both thought, you know, we're going to get a deal through and we won't need summer session. I'm not thinking that's likely when you see everything that's been going on this week. So we thank both of you so much for taking time to talk to us on this Friday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, still ahead here on the Now Detroit, a New York Times report is helping to expose